While I don't share the chairman's joy at our holding hearings on a government-run health care system, I do share his intention to make the debate and the legislative process as exciting as possible.
I'm sure you will do that, Mr. Army.
We'll do the best we can.
You and Dr. Kevorkian, I think, right?
I have been told about your charm and wit, and let me say, the reports on your charm are overstated, and the reports on your wit are understated.
Thank you very much.
Welcome back to Hardball. The last time a president tried to reform health care, the First Lady led the charge, and Clinton health care reform died in Congress. What lessons can President Obama take from the Clintons' effort? Jacob Hacker is a Yale professor and the author of a book about the Clinton health care plan called The Road to Nowhere. And Haynes Johnson wrote about the 2008 presidential race in the new book, The Battle for America 2008, and he wrote a behind-the-scenes account of the Clinton health care reform effort in the book, The System. Jacob Hacker, if there's a page on your book that you would want everyone in the White House to read this weekend, if there's a chapter, what would you highlight for them? What should they be studying?
Well, I would probably point him to a chapter in my book entitled The Plan, in which I talk about some of the major mistakes that the Clinton reformers made. But I think that the Obama reformers have definitely paid attention to what happened in 1993-94. They have, I think, been very attentive to the concerns about that episode, but I think at the same time they may have overlearned some of the lessons of 93-94. You know, there were two big lessons, I think, that people took correctly out of 93-94. One was that the president had tried to manage the process too directly, to develop his own proposal and to put it out there himself and really make it a White House effort. And the second lesson that was taken out of the Clinton reform failure was that whatever reformers did, they shouldn't do anything to threaten the existing private insurance arrangements on which Americans relied. But I think both of those lessons, very important, needed to be learned, have been overlearned to a little bit of too much of an extent. And in particular, I think that the one lesson of the Clinton reform effort that seems to have been forgotten is that you really need to have a positive case for change that you're presenting consistently and that's simple from the very beginning of the reform effort.
Haynes Johnson, how much deja vu are you experiencing these days, and what do you think is the most important lesson for the Obama team to have learned?
Enormously. Hearing Hillary just saying that, Dr. Kevorkian just a minute ago, brought it all back to me. The bitterness of it, the failure of the plan. And I think the real lesson in this is that you can't do it unless it's bipartisan. And that's the difficulty, because we're now more polarized than we were 15 years ago. And the issues are greater. More people have less insurance, and we are in an economic time where people are anxious, understandably. So you've got the problem where a president's greatest power is the power of persuasion. And you have to do that. The Clinton people did it for a while, but they didn't have the skills that Obama has of reaching over and trying to bring the country together. That's why he won the presidency. Now he's facing a tremendously difficult task. So I think this is an even greater, more fateful, titanic struggle than we had 15 years ago.
Jacob Hacker, do you think the Senate Finance Committee is now showing a little too much nostalgia for the old days of bipartisanship?
Yeah, I don't think that this, as Haynes was saying, this is such a partisan political environment. I don't think it's realistic to think that we're going to have the kind of bipartisan backroom deal that we had, for example, on Social Security back in the 1980s or on tax reform under Ronald Reagan. I think this is going to be inevitably a very partisan fight. And I don't think that the lesson I would take from the Clinton reform debate was that bipartisanship is the precondition of action. What I would say is that the really important thing is that the president has to move very quickly and decisively, and he does have to bring in this case, moderate Republicans on board, but that could occur through pressure and through persuasion toward the end of the process. It doesn't have to be a backroom deal, and I don't think that they're going to get a persuasive backroom deal. I mean, I think, to go back to the point I was making earlier, the president was right to make this a congressionally centered effort, and he was right to focus on reforms that would help those who don't have access to insurance today to get access to good options. But what he really needs to do now is show how middle-class Americans who have coverage will benefit from the reforms he supports. He needs to get out there in front of the debate and not let members of Congress and what they're talking about drive the discussion.
Now, the thing that I find eerie about both of these debates is that in both periods is that the plans being discussed are absolutely inexplicable. There is no kitchen table in America where anyone in any family can explain to anyone else in the family what it is the Congress is considering. And Haynes Johnson, I remember you coming around to my office when I was working at the Finance Committee at the time, and many others interviewing people about what we were doing, and we all had these day-to-day notions of who made what mistake today and who made what mistake last week. And in retrospect, my view of it was nothing was actually passable, that the goalposts kept moving, the whole thing was impossible, and that what we should have done was go for something much more simple, what the liberals in the House now call Medicare for all. What every strategist tells you is, of course, that's a political loser. But I want you both to consider the following. What if, after Hillary's disaster, for 2 years the Democrats said absolutely nothing, and then they started getting serious about trying to advance the debate on Medicare for all? Maybe 15 years later, like around now, the country might be ready for a serious vote on Medicare for all. The debate might have ripened if they had started it that long ago. Does that sound like a wacky lefty idea to you, Haynes?
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, I support that. It makes great sense to me because what we want is something that works, and it's so complex you cannot understand it, and everybody knows it. Therefore, it allows itself to be frightened and scared of all the what we're seeing in these town hall meetings. And if you do it slowly, do this incrementally, piece by piece, wait a while, explain it to the country. Be the educator. Be the public educator. Here's how it's going to affect you so you can understand it. If you can't understand it, it won't work, and you're going to have this kind of debacle that we had 15 years ago and is now generating so much heat and passion. And it is not a case of bipartisanship entirely. I agree with my colleague on this. That's not the point. The point is you've got to go slowly, you've got to bring in people in the center, and you've got to see what then comes, and you've got to educate the people.
Jacob, as I told Haynes at the time, at the end of our 24 hearings in the Senate Finance Committee on health care reform that year, Chairman Moynihan at the end of the final hearing put his hand over the microphone and simply turned to me and said, why don't we just delete the words 65 and over from the Medicare statute? It would be explainable. If you don't understand Medicare, you're related to someone who does. Your grandmother, your mother, someone can explain it to you. You don't have to go to a town hall meeting to have it explained. Do you think if the Democrats had made that their crusade for the last 15 years, we might actually be at the tipping point where the country would be ready to go for it?
I'm not sure that's true, but I think you're absolutely right that we really need to have a...
That is the tragedy at the heart of our healthcare system. The devastation when one stroke of bad luck undoes a lifetime of hard work. We can talk all we want about freedom and opportunity, about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But what does all that mean to a mother or father who can't take a sick child to the doctor? Today, as we strive for a new beginning to the 21st century, I believe everyone, every man, woman, and child, should have quality, affordable health care in America. Unfortunately, back in 1993 and 94, too many of our opponents adopted a strategy that amounted to just say no. I learned how important it is to present a plan that is clear and easy to understand. Today's plan is simpler, yet still bold. Now, I know my Republican opponents will try to equate health care for all Americans with government-run health care. Well, don't let them fool us again. My plan does not create a single new government department, agency, or bureaucracy. It is not a government takeover of health care. It is a public-private partnership that provides more choices. I call my plan the American Health choices plan. If you have,
we ought to plan for it, and we ought to make sure we cover everyone. That is the only way to get to universal health care coverage. That is what I've worked for 15 years, and I believe that we can achieve it. But if we don't even have a plan to get there, and we start out by leaving people, you'll never, ever control costs, improve quality, and cover everyone.
We all want an America defined by deep and meaningful equality, from civil rights to labor rights, from women's rights to gay rights, from ending discrimination. There are no acceptable limits, and there are no acceptable prejudices in the 21st century in our country.
We have a common task and a common challenge.
Why can't we see that we are all in this together?
18 million of you from all walks of life. Women and men, young and old, Latino and Asian, African American and Caucasian, rich, poor and middle class, gay and straight, you have stood with me. And I will continue to stand strong with you every time, every place, and every way that I can. The dreams we share are worth fighting for.